Hello, welcome back to Answer the Call podcast. It is just Audrey here today. No Kelsey, no guest. I'm doing a solo episode, which honestly makes me nervous, but we're gonna give it a go here. Kelsey is sick right now, so if y'all want to pray that she gets healthy soon, I'm sure she would appreciate that. And I am sure she'll be back on the podcast next week. But as for this week, I was just taking inventory of kind of what's been coming up for me recently, talking to people, working through the clarity process with people and the job search process, and on those consultation calls, like just taking inventory of what's kind of been on my mind and also in my personal conversations as well. And something that has really been coming up for me lately is confidence. And what does it mean to really become a confident person and be a confident person? And don't get me wrong, there are plenty of resources online that you could find about this. Plenty of confidence coaches, I'm sure, free stuff on YouTube. And a lot of those resources are really great about like posture, body language, how you talk, whatever it might be. What I want to talk more about is this necessary component of confidence that I was about to say that I don't think we talk about enough. We definitely talk about it all the time. But maybe I don't hear it so much in these how to have confidence videos. That necessary component of confidence is clarity. We talk about clarity all the time. But the reason that I'm saying that it's important for confidence is that I really don't think that you can this might be a crazy statement. I reserve the right to change my mind on this, but I don't think you can be confident if you don't have clarity. Clarity on some form of clarity. And there's a lot of different kinds of clarity that I could talk about, but just think about kind of this literal example of like, let's say when you finish work, you have a free evening. I know y'all with kids and super busy lives, you might be like, that never happens to me, but let's just pretend for a second. You have a free evening and you don't know how you're going to spend it. You don't have any plan for how you're going to spend it. So you just kind of start putzing around and you waste a lot of time that way. You're kind of just like walking around. Maybe you make some dinner, maybe you'll watch some TV. I don't know. And rather, the opposite of that would be when you have the plans, you actually have a really busy evening. So you're boom, 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 you're go, go, go. And you're able to walk with like more security in that. Like, I know I'm doing this and then I'm doing this and this and this, rather than when you don't have any of those plans and you're kind of walking with a little bit of insecurity. You're like, I could do this. And then all of a sudden a couple hours goes by. It's like, okay, how did that happen? Another way to think about this is just, starting your day, your work day with a to-do list. When you have that to-do list, we all know you're going to be more productive. We all know that you're going to get more done, rather than when you come into the work day and you kind of just check some emails, try to figure it out as you go. So I think about the different kind of almost like body positioning with that, but just the mindset with that too. Having the to-do list, having those plans figured out, you can approach that a lot more confidently, and there's a lot more security in that, rather than when you're kind of wishy-washy about what's going on. So that was the example that was kind of coming to my mind, to depict how that clear vision of what you're doing allows you to naturally start walking more confidently as you pursue that vision. And that really begins with clarity, right? In order to have a clear vision, you have to have clarity on what that vision is for your life, for your career. And with clarity, the first step there is self-reflection. And this is seriously a non-negotiable. You have to start with understanding yourself to understand what that clarity of your next step is going to be, or what the clarity of your life or your career is going to look like. You have to understand like who you are, where you're at now. Take inventory of that. It has to. You cannot skip this step. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about that self-reflection and why it's so crucial and why it's so necessary to the process. And I know I have to be careful with this topic because not everyone's comfortable with self-reflection. And I think there is a lot to talk about with that, where there is a dark side to self-reflection, where it can lead people into being very self-absorbed and kind of insufferable and very me, I. And then also I've seen just with myself how it can lead to seeing oneself as a project and really starting to strive. And of course, these aren't great and they're a very real part of self-reflection, but everything that we have in this world is going to have like goodness to it and darkness to it. There's going to be both light and dark. So I want to explore more of the light of self-reflection and how it can be an instrumental tool in finding that clarity, which then forms your confidence. So that's my little disclaimer that I know there's dark sides to self-reflection, and it's good to be aware of that. But let's talk about the light when it comes to self-reflection, because self-reflection draws you so beautifully into deeper connection with God. And I want to talk about that a little bit more because I'm reading this book right now. It's called The Gift of Being Yourself, The Sacred Call to Self-Discovery by David G. Benner, who's a psychologist. And don't get me wrong, I'm 22 pages into this book, so I'm not doing a book review yet. But it's obviously rocking my world because I'm only 22 pages in, and here I am making a whole podcast episode about it. But basically, he talks about primarily at least in the first 22 pages, talks about that interdependency between us and God, where you discover yourself by discovering God, but you also discover God by discovering yourself. And I had an experience with this about a month ago, which then led to my therapist actually recommending this book, where I was feeling very disconnected from myself, which is not normal for me. Yeah, this is about a month ago. Yeah, I was feeling disconnected and just kind of weird from that. It was very unsettling for me because I don't typically struggle with that. And I was doing all the things that I usually do, the journaling. I was reading some nonfiction books at that time, not necessarily self-help, but just learning more about the world and whatever. And, I help people through self-reflection all day long. And feel connected in that way. So it was all that to say, it was odd for me, and it was starting to weigh on me and starting to kind of really affect me. So I brought it to the Lord, and I just said, Lord, I don't know what to do about this. I'm feeling really disconnected. I don't know what to do, but this is just how I'm feeling. And I heard him so clearly say, you will connect with yourself by first connecting with me. Which, that rocked my world. You will connect with yourself by first connecting with me. And that immediately got me back into my studying the Word, back into my Bible. And it's like, it was instant. Like, this issue of not feeling connected immediately dissipated. It was gone. And that was such a transformational experience where, for many reasons, just learning this lesson of, oh, okay, I'm going to connect with myself by first connecting with God. And also, like, he's right there. Instantly, I was able to connect with him, and instantly that helped this problem that I was going through. And it was just a good reminder that he's there when we call out to him, and he's waiting for us and truly desires that connection with us. We just have to pursue it and let him pursue us. I think that's even bigger, like letting him pursue us, letting him in, and letting him give us these tools to connect with him and to thereby connect with ourselves. So I was struggling with all this. That's when I started reading this book. And this book is awesome. So there, again, this interdependence between knowing self and knowing God. And this has been promoted by theologians since early days. It's they quoted, I'll read the St. Augustine quote in here. Grant, Lord, that I may know myself, that I may know thee. Like right there it is. And there's some other examples, but I won't read through all of them. So anyways, what do we do with that? And I just want to talk about how identity is actually a gift from God. Because discovering yourself is not, how do I say this? It's not about creating a self, which I think the self-care or self-help industry really gets wrong. There seems to be a lot of messaging around like creating your dream self or creating your dream life, but I think that's different. So I'll talk just about self, creating your dream self. And it's not about creating it. It's about actually receiving the gift of myself in Christ. And identity is not our creation. It's given to us and we get to discover it, which is, I mean, that blew my mind. Like, how beautiful is that? That my life, part of my life gets to be just discovering this identity that the Lord has given me and discovering it in different seasons and discovering it in different trials and different things that are going on. And like, how cool is that? And I think about when someone gives you a gift in general, like if someone gives you a book, I don't know, and you get to discover that book and read through it and realize all the reasons that this person thought of you because of this book. And like, if that's just a book, the gift of identity, that's pretty sick, to put it simply. And I also just think about how much God probably delights in seeing us explore that gift and fall in love with ourselves. Like, truly fall in love with ourselves, which honestly, it feels kind of weird to say. I'm sure it feels kind of weird to hear because there is kind of this messaging sometimes that, well, okay, there's two sides to this. There's the messaging of self-care, self-love, all of that is way overboard, right? And we see that all the time. But I think on the flip side, there is a messaging around self-love that it's almost like shameful. Like, you shouldn't think about yourself. You shouldn't focus on yourself. You're supposed to serve everybody else around you. And while it's great to serve people around you, not at the cost of self-abandonment. Let me put that on pause for a second because I have more to say about that. I was talking about God delighting in you as he's watching you discover your identity that he has given to you and falling in love with it and learning more about it and how you can express that identity through the actions that you take personally and professionally. Like, your job can be an expression of your identity. That's something that we say all the time. Your job should not be a source of identity. And for so many people it is. And so many people, I think, recognize that and struggle with that. But finding fulfillment in your job doesn't mean finding a job that then becomes your identity. Your job gets to be an expression of your identity. It gets to be a way that you serve other people through your identity, through who you are, through what you're naturally good at. Which is, again, so cool and so beautiful. And this self-discovery also, I think about how it really leads us to these places of our hearts, these corners of our heart that we encounter God. And where the interdependency comes in here is, in order to encounter God, you have to know him, right? You have to know about him and start to know more of who he is. So it's like you can't have this self-discovery without also discovering God. And you can't discover God without also discovering yourself. Because I think about, even when I read about the God in the Old Testament, I'm like, I'm discovering a lot about myself when I read about the God in the Old Testament, because I get kind of scared. And I had this experience a few months ago when I was reading Exodus, and God's laying out all of the laws. And I was like, whoa, like this isn't the God that I know. This is not the God that takes care of me and is so gentle with me and so caring, but it's the same God. And I had to go through a process with that of understanding like, okay, no, God is good. God is good in the New Testament. God is good in the Old Testament. That was a whole different journey that I won't get into, but I discovered a lot about myself by discovering more of this Old Testament, this more of God in the Old Testament. It's like, oh, wow, I have this resistance to this, what seems like harshness, these harsh rules and laws, and I'm facing this resistance. What does that mean that I'm going through? How does that show up in my life? How does that affect my relationship with other people? But more importantly, my relationship with God. Do I only like God when he's being kind and comforting? Can I not handle this God because of X, Y, and Z reasons? Like, it brought up all of this self-discovery, and that was just from reading my Bible. And it's so cool. I keep coming back to, and then I say, it's just so cool because I'm in awe with all of this. And I hope that you can join me in that awe and that I'm displaying that well, because I'm just in awe. And that's what leads me to kind of trail off on my sentences. And I just pray that you join me in that awe and wonder of how God has designed us and how he has woven this together, this interdependency that draws us even closer to him and more intimately woven into his plan and to his creation. So cool. Okay, moving on. So I was talking about the self-abandonment. So going back to that for a little bit, because the reason that I'm talking about all of this, to bring it back to what I started with, is that clarity begins with self-reflection. And the clarity is what informs the confidence. So from knowing yourself, knowing who you are, knowing what you want, knowing what you're good at, knowing maybe what you're not good at, knowing all these things, and it's not a one time you figure it all out and then you never have to do it again. Knowing how to do it once, how to do it that first time, or how to do it in a new way, and then developing the tools to continue this self-discovery. It's a lifelong process. So you continue this self-discovery, having those tools, that is what is ultimately going to lead to confidence. When you can show up and you feel you are connected to yourself, you know who you are, that's how you walk confidently. That's how you step with confidence, and knowing God as well. That's really what it all comes down to. And that is only found through self-reflection. I mean, I guess like the Lord could just open up, the big booming voice in the sky and just speak all of this to you. But I don't know. He doesn't typically do that for me. So I'm just going to go the self-discovery route. Join me in that process. But I do want to talk a little bit about just how, if I haven't made this clear, self-reflection is good. There's so much goodness to it. And I really want you to give yourself the permission to let yourself discover yourself. I'm giving you the permission to let yourself discover yourself, because so many of us think that we have to be consistently pouring out to other people in order to be kind of a quote good Christian. And don't get me wrong, serving others is important, but it's also important to not abandon yourself, not have self-abandonment in the process. And again, we come back to the extremes of kind of the two sides of it, with like the self-care industry and the self-help industry. Yeah, they're never gonna be worried about self-abandonment, because they're gonna have you focused so much on yourself that you don't care about anyone or anything and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But then some other messaging comes in and it does promote self-abandonment, because it's like, well, you should never think about yourself, and you can't be selfish. And if you're selfish, then blah, 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 all this stuff. Or if you spend any time on yourself, then you're selfish. If you spend time journaling rather than talking to people, and serving them, you're selfish. That's dangerous messaging too. We got to find, hold the tension, I guess, is the very Christian phrase, the Christian way of saying it. But finding that balance between the two. And another thing that I want to say is distracting yourself. This is something I hear all the time. I hear people say oh, ha ha ha, I can't be alone with my own thoughts. I understand people say that it's a joke, but I also understand that our subconscious doesn't know when we're joking, and our subconscious drives our actions. So if you are joking that you can't be alone with your own thoughts, you're going to start to believe that. And if you believe that, then you're practicing self-abandonment, because you need to be alone with your own thoughts. You need to know what your thoughts are, saying, and what that says about you, and how that leads to you to discover yourself, and again, fall in love with the gift of your identity. And there's so many layers to that, the I can't be alone with my own thoughts thing. So many layers to that I'm not going to try to get into, but I would challenge you, like, if that is something that you think about sometimes, it's like, okay, like, how can you learn to be alone with your own thoughts? What does it look like to be alone with your own thoughts in a healthy way, in a way that is beautiful, in a way that leads you to discover yourself? Like, why are you afraid to discover yourself, if that's the case? I think that's the case for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are afraid to learn who they are. Maybe they're afraid that they're not going to like that person. They might be afraid that they're not going to like themselves. And that's why it makes so much sense for them to, in their mind, turn their gaze outwards and look at everybody else instead, because then they don't have to address who they are. And if that resonates with you, I'm so sorry that you might be feeling that way. And I mean, God created you beautifully. He knit you together in your mother's womb. He has counted every hair on your head. And that's just truth. I ain't making that up. That's just truth. You go look it up for yourself in the Bible. There are so many phrases about how he has created you. And if you're going to sit there and believe that as truth, but then you're going to see yourself as an exemption, I would really challenge you on that. I would challenge you to challenge yourself on that. And like, what would happen if you didn't see yourself as an exemption from God's plan? What happened if you allowed yourself to believe that he actually did create you on purpose and for a purpose? Some cool things might happen. And I think those realizations all really come through self-discovery and conversations with people about this kind of stuff. Oh, which honestly perfectly segues into me saying that this is what we talk about. This is what we talk about in our clarity process. And it all begins with giving yourself the permission to really just spend 30 minutes on a consultation call with me, where we can talk more about what this looks like specifically for you. And then giving yourself the permission to invest in yourself to take part in a program like this. And the way that we talk about it is particularly as it relates to your career, which is probably really exciting because our careers take up so much of our time, like so much of our time. So it's nice to have self-reflection with that purpose at the end of it the purpose is to discover yourself and to discover God, of course, but also this tangible, like, very practical purpose in front of us of, and then that could get me into a career that is really exciting and fulfilling. That's possible. I really believe that's possible for you if you start with this self-reflection and just get honest. The number one thing I look for in people when we're accepting people into our program is that they do have that open-mindedness and that they are willing to hear from God in this, because that's what's going to happen when you look inward. That's what's going to happen when you look up to God at the same time, is that you're going to hear from him. I mean, James 1:5, when we ask for wisdom, he promises to provide it, promises he will deliver. That's pretty cool, which is my tagline for this episode. That's pretty cool. But it is. And so we can talk about that on our consultation call and talk about what it would look like to actually walk through this together. So clarity really begins with that self-reflection. And there's more involved in clarity. Clarity and self-reflection are not synonymous. It's that self-reflection is a part of clarity. And then that clarity is what informs your confidence moving forward in your job search. But then also that's going to bleed into the other areas of your life, because now you have the tools to know how to find clarity in your job, but then also you can apply that to your relationships and your parenting or your being a child, right? To your parents. And there's so many places. It's not so siloed. We have to silo it because we know we got to get the job done over here. So we got to make sure that we're talking about it in context of your career. But these are tools that you can take everywhere. I really do believe that. And your job then, going through this process, this self-reflection, leading to clarity, leading to confidence, going through that process with your job, that's what it allows you to then find a job that gets to be an expression of your identity. And how beautiful is that? How beautiful would it be if everybody was working a job in the expression of their identity? And you're like, oh, that would be a miracle. And it would be. Here's the thing about miracles, though. Miracles are not out of order, right? Miracles are not like a disruption to the natural order of things. They're actually a restoration of the natural order. It's a restoration of what the Lord created and the world that we have to look forward to and that we can start building now. That comes from Dane Ortlund, that miracles are not a disruption to the natural order. They're actually a restoration of the natural order. I'm paraphrasing. But that's where I'm going to end it. Like, be part of building that kingdom now, building that kingdom on earth by getting into a job that allows you to be, it allows you to express your identity. So that, I promise you, it's pretty dang cool to end this on my tagline for the episode. Thanks so much for listening to my ramblings about self-reflection. And I'll end it by saying, if you want to walk confidently, there's so many things that you do, like I mentioned at the beginning. Body language, speak the way that you speak, making eye contact, sure. This is the longer way, and this is the way that's actually going to provide a transformation for you. I pray. That's my prayer, at least. Okay. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. To get an even more meaningful head start into your calling, head to thecalledcareer.com, where my fellow career coach Audrey and I have created a whole suite of free resources and tools to help you get clear and get a job today. For those who are definitely ready to land a job or start a business in the next 6 to 12 months, we're here to help you biblically and practically discern your calling through coaching, reflection, and deep market research. Identify the job that's aligned with it, even if you currently have no idea what you want. Rebrand your resume and LinkedIn to translate your background to appeal to your future boss. P.S. We take this off your plate and do this for you. Also, we'll teach you how to land referrals and get attention from leadership through networking. Again, if that makes you nervous, we have these emails and LinkedIn messages literally written for you so you don't have to sweat. We're also here to give you unlimited interview practice so you're prepared to address every elephant in the room and knock selling yourself out of the park. Then we'll round out with helping you negotiate your salary so you land thousands more. Just so you know, recent clients have gotten $8,000 to $50,000 salary increases, even though they were totally non-traditional candidates. That's because we specialize in helping non-traditional career pivoters land jobs they're ecstatic to serve in. It takes work, but we're here to see you through until the end, when we're celebrating that day that you send me an email in all caps and you say, Kelsey, I got the job. Then you could be on the podcast. But I'll be here until then, keeping you accountable and encouraged by meeting with you literally until you land the job you want, even if that's up to 6 months from now within our program. Apply to join at thecalledcareer.com, and I'll see you next week here at Answer the Call. Bye for now.